Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. It's been a while to Langer at the mic here. This first live stream in an entire month here on Langer at the mic, and well, I was just it was a bit of an unplanned break that I took for about a month, just focusing on work this past summer, just hustling, just grinding, and just honestly enjoying the summer and being in summer mode here in Toronto, and yeah, it just was a magical run. The Habs went on, and then boom, from the Stanley Cup final to the draft to off season, then of course the Cowboys off season and training camp and all that. Just been keeping up with that, but yeah, hope you guys have been doing fantastically well, or just fantastic or well or both. But right now, the Montreal Canadiens, or should I say the team from Raleigh, North Carolina, gave me a bit of an unfortunate reason to come back live and return for my hiatus, I guess. I was going to come back eventually, but I guess I wasn't expecting to come back this soon to talk about hockey. But as we all know, it's been 2 days since the Carolina Hurricanes offer sheeted Jesperi Kotkaniemi to a 1-year. Let's just pull it up right over here. Just going to share my screen right over here with the contract details. There we go. So, yeah. So we got offer sheeted to a 1-year, $6.10035 million contract. And with a $20 signing bonus. And where is the number 15 again? Somewhere. Yeah, but a $20 signing bonus for Sebastian Aho. So as we know, this is the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that did not pay their Calder winning rookie goaltender and decided to instead overpay for Freddie Anderson and let Peter Mrazek walk, of course. This is also a team whose initial offer to Dougie Hamilton was about $6.5 million. So, yeah, obviously this was specifically a move to spite the Montreal Canadiens for offer sheeting Sebastian Aho back in the 2019 offseason. But here's the thing. So I'm not going to talk about this from the Carolina perspective. I'm not even going to talk about this from the pettiness perspective because I don't care about the Carolina Hurricanes. I care about the Montreal Canadiens. So, and the Carolina Hurricanes, the way their, I guess, persona or the way they market themselves as an organization, they're a bunch of jerks and all that. They crave this attention because they need the attention in order to be relevant as a franchise. So I'm not going to give them that attention. Instead, I'm just going to focus on what it means to the Montreal Canadiens and what the Canadiens will have to do going forward. And yeah, Noah C. Glennon right there in the comment section, like you said, just a juvenile signing. The Montreal media, there's been all over, just a whole bunch of opinions left and right about it. Like just literally all of Habs Twitter came out of just off-season mode in the last 2 or 3 days because of this offer sheet, I guess myself included. But anyway, let's get right to it. So what does it mean? Well, it's very simple. What it means is that the Montreal Canadiens, they had a terrible season in 2017, 2018. And they could have relinquished it, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, relinquished it with a top 3 draft pick and potentially taking that top 3 draft pick and turning around or at least kickstarting their rebuild or their retool with that top 3 draft pick. They could have taken Kotkaniemi, of course, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. They could have taken Filip Zadina. They could have taken Brady Tkachuk, among many other players that they could have taken. But they chose Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And honestly, you can argue that they reached for Kotkaniemi. So overall, what it means is the Canadiens, and I tweeted this on Twitter earlier today at Mike Langer, what this means is the Canadiens completely blew it from start to finish with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And what's even worse is that they did the same thing with Alex Galchenyuk. They did the same thing with Alex Galchenyuk, drafting him 3rd overall, which was the right pick at the time. That was the right pick at the time. But just like with Galchenyuk, they rushed Kotkaniemi to the NHL. Kotkaniemi, who had never played North American hockey before, was playing in Europe. He was playing with men, and he never really produced at a point per game pace. Because look, again, he's playing with men, right? So he never produced. Like, it's not like Nick Suzuki where he got to light up the OHL, or even like Alex Galchenyuk where he got to light up the OHL with Sarnia. Kotkaniemi didn't have that chance. So as much as he projected to be a great franchise two-way center, he needed a little more time to develop. But the Canadiens did not give him that time. So they reached for him and they rushed him. Or arguably, I'll say arguably reached for him. I don't think it was, I don't regret selecting Kotkaniemi personally. But still, you can argue that they could have maybe taken Tkachuk, maybe Zadina, but Zadina, it's easy to say in hindsight. But anyway, at the time, I kind of had the feeling that it was a reach. So they reached for him, arguably. But what is pretty clear is that they rushed him to the NHL. They rushed him to the pros. But what's even worse about having rushed him to the pros is they weren't willing to live with the inevitable rookie mistakes that comes from rushing an 18-year-old centerman from Finland and expecting him to produce at a high level right away in the NHL as an 18-year-old when he hasn't really produced yet in the pros in overseas. So you're expecting him to produce or be a top centerman right away. And even if you aren't, that's okay if you're not expecting him to be that top centerman right off the bat, because that's normal for an 18-year-old kid coming in from overseas who's a promising young player, but not a phenom just yet. So that's realistic to expect that. But then if you're going to rush him to the NHL, be prepared to live with his mistakes and keep giving him the opportunities to develop into the player that you want him to develop into. And give him, and every time he makes a mistake, don't nail his rear end to the bench because of it. Don't put guys like Eric Stahl, or back when, even to some extent, Max Domi, or I hate to say this, but even Philip Deneau. Don't give, like you have to allow Kotkaniemi the chance to live and die with his mistakes if you're going to rush him to the NHL like that. So 3 mistakes. They arguably reached for him, but that's not the worst mistake. The worst mistakes are these 2. Again, as I tweeted at Mike Langer, that they rushed him to the NHL and they didn't give him the chance to get they didn't give him the full confidence to be able to live and die with his mistakes, or to, just basically, to be able to live with his mistakes, with his rookie mistakes that were going to be inevitable because, again, he's not a phenom. So, they rushed him and they did not give him the benefit of the doubt and full confidence, even though they rushed him. And last but not least, as we can tell here, and obviously not rushing him to the NHL and not living with his mistakes led to him being benched in games 1 and 2, or game 1 of the first round of these playoffs. And then in games 4 and 5 of the Stanley Cup final, when he already had, 7 playoff goals or 8 playoff goals? One of the youngest players to score, to be in the top 3 of in terms of playoff goals. Just looking this up real quick because I just want to make absolutely sure. So career playoffs, 9 goals in 29 games. When already he was on pace, like the fastest, he was like one of the fastest to score 9 goals. And they didn't give him the benefit of the doubt. And then those are the 3 mistakes. The 4th one, the obvious, is now they messed up his restricted free agent negotiations. They messed up his contract situation. Marc Bergevin, Jeff Molson, everyone involved in you can maybe say, his agent wants to get him the most money as possible, so you can't blame him. And you obviously can't blame, you cannot be mad at Kotkaniemi for taking the money that was given to him. You can't. And there have been rumors swirling around out there that when Kotkaniemi was scratched for game 4 of the Stanley Cup final that he had played his last game as a Montreal Canadian. They're looking pretty true right now. So anyway, so I care. That's what bothers me with this offer sheet. Not the team from not the Carolina Hurricanes trying to become relevant, but how much the Montreal Canadiens effed up Jesperi Kotkaniemi and his development. That's what I'm upset about. But Bergevin now has, what is it? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So until Friday, I guess, to match the offer. And should Marc Bergevin match the offer? Well, I might have given that away in the title a little bit. I'm of the belief that he should not match the offer for several reasons. Well, let's talk about why he should match the offer. Matching the offer is obvious because right now you already let Phillip Danault walk to the LA Kings for, because you weren't willing to pay him, which I'm honestly cool with because I was ready to see Kotkaniemi get the opportunity as a top 2 center in Montreal with Ryan Poehling, who signed a very good that was a very good contract of $750K, 2-way contract for the first year, 1-way for the second year. So Ryan Poehling is right now slotted in as a top 3 centerman on the Montreal Canadiens, one way or another. But yeah, so that's why you got that's the easy answer to keep Kotkaniemi. Eat the $6 million cap hit for 1 year, although you have to tender him at $6.1 million for next year. So that's not ideal, of course. But here's the bigger reason why you should not offer. Why Bergevin should not match this, because the same reason he did not give in to what Phillip Danault wanted, why should he give in to what Jesperi Kotkaniemi wants? Clearly, Marc Bergevin and Dominique Ducharme and Claude Julien back, but when he was here, they clearly aren't interested in giving Kotkaniemi the chance to develop into a number 2 centerman on the Montreal Canadiens. So why should they pay him like it? They've dug themselves in this situation, so they have to stand their ground and see it through. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but that's what they have to do because they're in that situation right now. And guess who's up for contract in the next 2 years? Guess who's up for new contracts? Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Alexander Romanov. So if Marc Bergevin wants to stand his ground as a negotiator and say, we're going to pay you as an RFA what we think you're worth, then clearly the way they've treated Kotkaniemi to this point, they have not shown that they think he's worth $6.1 million. Absolutely not. So that's why if they match this offer sheet and pay Kotkaniemi at $6.1 million, Nick Suzuki and his agent are going to be like, well, let's see what we're going to have here. Romanov and his agent, what are we going to have here? And Cole Caulfield and his agent, what do we got here? Especially if Cole Caulfield decides to score 30 or 40 goals next year or in the next 2 years. So, and that's how, honestly, I hate to bring the Leafs into this conversation, but they're kind of a good example of what not to do when you're dealing with players that want a lot of money. Look how they screwed themselves with Austin Matthews and John Tavares and Mitch Marner and William Nylander. William Nylander's like, hey, Austin Matthews is making this much. John Tavares is making this much. Mitch Marner's, Marner was after Nylander, but still, look how much they're making. I want that money. And then he held out. And then finally, Kyle Dubas had to give in and pay William Nylander, which honestly now is looking like one of the better contracts of the 4 in retrospect. But Mitch Marner commanded that 10.9 whatever million dollars that he ended up getting. But if Kyle Dubas maybe stood his ground a little bit more with Nylander, maybe a little bit more with Matthews, or given Matthews like a longer term deal at less or whatever, this is where maybe Kyle Dubas and the Leafs would not have been as cap screwed right now that they are if they handled those contract negotiations a little bit better. So here's where Marc Bergevin has to stand his ground. And I hate to say it, if I had envisioned this before this offseason that it would come to this, this is not an ideal situation by any means, but given that the Canadiens have dug themselves this far in this hole, they got to suck it up, stand their ground, take the first and third round pick, and create something of value with that. So now where do they go from here? Well, there are a couple of options. And also, just to be clear, the Habs, if they want to put Weber and Byron on LTIR, they could afford to offer sheet to match Kotkaniemi's offer sheet. They could afford to keep him if they want to. But when Byron comes off of LTIR, well, then they won't be able to afford him as much. So, so a couple of options. They can still look at potentially free agency and just they might have to that like in that case, they might have to accept that they're going to take a bit of a step back next year and just deal with that, which might not be the worst thing, but it definitely sucks after having gone to sound like a final. So they can go the free agency route. And in terms of centers available, I'm just pulling that up on Cap Geek right now. I know there's, I think Bozak's still available. Bozak's available. There really isn't much. I mean, Eric Stahl's still available. Like Brandon Dubinsky, although he didn't play all of last year. So no. Travis Zajac, I mean, yeah, like it's pretty slim pickings at center right now. Not going to lie. But Tyler Bozak might be the best unrestricted free agent option in the short term, at least. Or they could go the offer sheet route and say, you know what? We just got offer sheeted. We're going to offer sheet Elias Pettersson in Vancouver. Right? It would have been so nice if they offer sheeted Svechnikov, though. Oh, that would have been nice. But just offer sheet Elias Pettersson out of Vancouver. That's another option. They might not be able to afford the $9 or $10 million that it would take to offer sheet Elias Pettersson, but that's where you got to get, do some cap gymnastics. But Elias Pettersson, I think, is going to be a player who will be more worth doing that for than Kotkaniemi. And also another thing, just going back to like how they screwed up the Kotkaniemi situation. If they did not screw up the Kotkaniemi contract or just the whole Kotkaniemi development, whatever situation, would they have really tried to offer sheet Sebastian Aho in the first place? And if they, I don't know, that's just something to think about, That's just something to think about. If they really believed in Kotkaniemi and given him the chance, maybe they would have had to offer sheet Sebastian Aho. I mean, it was a good gamble, don't get me wrong, but if they actually wanted to keep him, maybe they should have tried to offer sheet him for a little bit more. But still, Sebastian Aho is going to be a UFA by the time he's like 26, 27. So that's going to be fun. Let's see what he'll command. But yeah, so basically, replacing Kotkaniemi again. Free agency, not much there. What about trades? Christian Dvorak's a name that's being floated around. I don't personally love Christian Dvorak. I'd be okay with it, but I don't think Christian Dvorak's the type of guy that will be like, oh yeah, like a great replacement for Kotkaniemi and put the Habs over the top, because Dvorak has never had more than 38 points in a season. He's still a young player, still 25 years old, and he's a two-way guy, sure. And he's actually a decent guy in faceoffs. I have the numbers in front of me here. 55% a couple of years, 52% last year, 51% a couple of years ago. So he would be more of a Philip Deneau type of guy, I guess, instead of Kotkaniemi, which, again, for what the Habs need, maybe wouldn't be the worst thing, but it wouldn't be ideal for sure. So, or you could always come back to just completely, if you could find a way to get Jack Eichel without giving up Caulfield or Suzuki, I guess that's what it has to come down to also. But last but not least, just maybe stand pat and gamble that Ryan Poehling's a guy that could step in and take a second line role. That would be a very risky thing to hope for. But if that's the case, that would be like a home run and a half for the Montreal Canadiens if Ryan Poehling could step in and be a second line centerman, insulated by Evans and Paquette and Perreault, obviously. That would be huge, because then they'll just say, hey, look, like that would just give Marc Bergevin all the negotiating leverage in the world to say that, I ain't going to pay guys that I'm not going to pay guys more than what I think they're worth. And I'm willing to take the risk that guys that are on cheaper contracts could step up and fill those roles. So that would be a gamble. Don't get me wrong. But man, that would be a home run and a half if Poehling could somehow be a second line center already and put up like 40, 50 points or something. But yeah, it's not an ideal situation by any means. There's this is just not an ideal situation, but the Canadiens, like I said, they dug themselves in this hole. So they have to go the best route of trying to get out of it, which again is not matching the offer sheet and just taking the first and third round pick, flipping it to Arizona for Dvorak, or just now being able to afford maybe offer sheeting Pettersson and just moving on. Honestly, moving on. A couple of comments here from Noah Siegel London. Obviously, if you have a comment, leave it in the comment section as usual. I'm so happy to be back and just looking forward to the engagement that we've had all season and in the early parts in the off season. But yeah, Noah Siegel London. Couple of comments here from earlier. Let's just see. Letting the Hurricanes take KK puts them in a tough spot financially for 1 year, and then they have to pay him again or waste $6.1 million for one season. Like, yeah, friggin'. If the Hurricanes weren't willing to pay Dougie Hamilton, or if they weren't willing to pay Nedeljkovic, rather, they're definitely should not be willing to pay Kotkaniemi $6.1 million. Like, yeah. So it's basically like the Hurricanes just make them suffer for their pettiness and their just. I'm not going to use like juvenile whatever that the Montreal media or so many people on Twitter are saying. Just look, it's a dumb move. That's what it is. It's just not a smart move. And sure, okay, it's petty, but just make them pay for their pettiness. That's all. Try to risk the biscuit to offer sheet Elias Pettersson. Yeah, just like we talked about. And if they lose KK, they lose a potential bargaining chip if they decide to try and go for someone like Eichel, which they won't. I mean, yeah, like if Eichel is already pretty much a long shot to begin with, especially if you're not willing to give up Suzuki or Caulfield, which I'm not by any means. So yeah, you're losing that bargaining chip, but you do have the extra first and third round pick, which you can debate that Kotkaniemi is worth more than that, but I don't know if Kotkaniemi is not going to turn into what we want him to become or what we think he'll become, then he'll end up being worth less than that first and third round pick if he plateaus at 30, 40 points a season. Even if he's like a decent defensive center, like as a first and third round pick, that's a little steep for that type of player. If he becomes a 50, 60 point guy, two-way center, good on faceoffs and all that as a centerman, then yeah, that's hella worth the first and third round pick. But if he doesn't end up becoming that, well, honestly, that might not be the worst value for him at this point right now. But the best scenario would have been to sign him, get him under contract for 2 or 3 years at $3-4 million, maybe tops, and hoping he turns into that player that you want him to become. And that's all I have here on this live stream of Langer at the Mic. As usual, if you enjoy my content, give me a big thumbs up on this video. It's been a while, clearly. Give me a big thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to my channel. Give me a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Mike Langer for all three. And yeah, I'll be honest, I've been quiet this off season, but with the offer sheet news and September's right around the corner. It's in 2 days from now. So, I'll be back. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know how many post-game shows I'll be able to do this year, but I'll be focusing more on roundtable shows this year, I'd say, but I'll be back. And it's good to be back. So yeah, as usual, hope you enjoyed, just give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, give me a follow on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Mike Langer for all three. And as usual, this has been a Langer at the Mic live edition of off season, whatever. Yeah, just call whatever you want. But yeah, thanks for joining in on this live stream of Langer at the Mic. And I look forward to seeing you again next time.